Have you heard about Anchor? Well, it's one of the easiest ways to create a podcast. Not only is it 100% free, but it has a variety of creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or a computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast to other sites such as Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many others for you. And Anchor even allows you to make money from your podcast without a required minimum listenership. So whether you've been in the podcasting game for a long time or you're completely new to it, Anchor is so user-friendly that it's basically your one-stop shop for making a podcast. So what are you waiting for? Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. You're listening to First Fossil. Because sometimes you simply need someone to help you take that first fossil. Hello and welcome to First Fossil, a show where we learn together how to take that first fossil toward becoming the best versions of ourselves. My name is Candace Olushala, and today's special guest is returning. He was on the show last year, and he's been doing his Fit to Fat to 40 journey, and he's done. He's in a totally new location now. A lot of life changes have happened. So I wanted to do a follow-up and just see where he's been since we last talked. So guys, without further ado, here's my friend once again, Drew Manning. Drew, how you doing, man?
Candace, it's always good to be on your show. I appreciate you having me on twice. And I'm excited to get caught up because a lot has happened since the last time I was on. So
yeah, you're like, there's like birds chirping, like it's a whole vibe where you are now. So like, like, where are you? How did we get there? What was the thought process between moving? How has that been?
Yeah, I'll connect the dots for you. So I am living that aloha lifestyle. Moved to the beautiful state of Hawaii, which is actually where my family's from on my dad's side. So I actually, I never lived here or grew up here other than in 2015, I moved here for a year. But we visited, my dad's family growing up, coming to this island. We live on the Big Island. A lot of people don't know there's different islands, and the island of Hawaii is the Big Island. It's the main one, but most people think of Oahu, or that's where Honolulu is, and Waikiki, and the stuff you see in the movies. So how did I go from Utah to here? It's been a long journey, but in a nutshell, the short version is back in 2015 was during the transition of going through my divorce with my ex-wife, and we decided to move here as a family. Even though we were divorced, we still considered ourselves a family with our two daughters to go through our transition out here. And so we moved out here. It was very healing. It was probably the best decision we've ever made, because I think that's why we're still good friends and we co-parent really well, was because we spent time to heal ourselves individually. And she's wanted to move back ever since. But, there was just too much going on. It was too many moving parts, because now she has, she's engaged, she has a fiance. My girls are older. My life situation, is just like, lots of things happening. And this past year in 2020, she came out here with them for Thanksgiving. And the girls are really excited about possibly moving here, and the stars aligned for me, her fiance, and our two daughters to move out here. Obviously not together, like living together, but we all decided to move out here as a unit, to raise our girls out here. So big life change.
Wow. I love that style of co-parenting. Like, I mean, I feel like I've never heard this particular style, but I think for your girls, it's just so nice to be able to go, oh, well, dad's and mom are both in the same place, instead of like dad's in Hawaii and I have to go to the mainland to go visit mom, or vice versa. Like that's a lot. So that's really cool that you guys came up with that agreement and are friends enough to do something like that, and ultimately support your girls as they're growing up and they get the best of both worlds. So that's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It's not easy, but it's definitely worth it. And I think if you put your kids first and you put your ego aside, you can make a lot of
Mm.
And a book that helps me do that is Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. Really, really good book. Highly recommend. Um, Especially post divorce, it's so easy to get wrapped up in like, you did this to me and you did that to me, and so I'm going to get you back, and then you end up hurting your kids more than you think, even though you're trying to hurt the other person. And
Right.
a lot of it has to do with ego. And so I think both of me and my ex luckily have both done the work to
Mm.
heal ourselves individually so that we can show up as co-parents and put our girls, needs first. So it is different. It's unique. I think our parents' generation didn't have the tools that we have. And so, divorce was, a lot of times ugly.
Hmm.
And you see that the kids are the ones that end up suffering when the parents can't get along,
Right.
So anyways, yeah, I feel very blessed.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. And it's nice that you get to move where your family is also from. So are you, do you still have a lot of family that is in Hawaii that you get to visit all the time that is like within drivable distance to see regularly?
You have a brother that lives out here. My grandparents, grew up on this island, they passed away, so their grave is here on the island. And I have a brother on Oahu, and I have some cousins over there as well. So most of my family has moved off of the Big Island, other than my brother and his wife and kids. So yes, I do have family out here, which is cool.
Okay. That's really cool. That's really nice. I like that. I like that a
Mm-hmm.
lot. So I First off, I have to say, I am so proud of you. I know you were
Thank you.
scared. You were scared. You were like, I'm not going to make it to the end. It's not going to go where I thought it was. And then you end up doing so well. So, back when we last talked, you were still in the middle. You're approaching the end. You're approaching the
Yeah.
end of the gaining side of the fit to fat to 40, and a lot of life changes were happening. You had a breakup, I mean, it was just a lot going on, very emotional. So how unpack that, the downward trend,
Mhm.
how did that happen? And how are you doing emotionally on the second leg versus how you were
Yeah.
doing emotionally on the first leg?
Dude, that's a really good question. Exercise is probably the most underrated antidepressant that we have available to ourselves. There was a study done where they compared three groups of people. One was a antidepressant that they gave the people, a group. The other group got the antidepressant plus exercise, and the other group got just exercise. And the group that outperformed the other groups was the group that got just the exercise.
Mm.
And there's more to it than that. But what I'm saying is, exercise is a very powerful antidepressant. And to be honest with you, me going through that breakup that you mentioned was probably one of the lowest points of my life. It was really, really hard emotionally to be in an unhealthy physical state, to go through a big life change where you love someone, and then a harsh, all of a sudden type of breakup. And I was in the middle of my journey, and I was in the public eye, and having to like relive it almost every day, because everyone's like, where's Julie, what happened, I didn't hear about it. And then I have to remind people and relive it over and over and over again, right? It's
Yeah.
People are all up in your business, it's really interesting. It's a really weird dynamic. But anyways, how did I get back to fit even though I was going through those hard life changes? That's the power of something like exercise. Even though the motivation wasn't there to do it, the accountability to the thousands of people that were doing the journey with me, I was like, if these people can do it, because it's all relative, right? Like your hard stuff that you go through for you seems like the end of the world, right? Like, oh my gosh, my life's over, I went through a breakup. While someone else, is dealing with like the death of a child, or the death of a loved one, or something that is unimaginable, right? Type of pain. And it's all about perspective. And for me, my life kind of came crumbling down, and how I was able to get through that was the accountability to the thousands of people that were doing the journey with me. So it was like, if they can do it, I'm sure they have hard stories and they have hard things that they're going through. I can do this too, because I said I was going to do what I was going to do. And so I had to follow through with it, even though at first the motivation wasn't there. And that's why the way I do my transformations, it's not like day one, it's like I'm running 10 miles and squatting and deadlifting and just getting back into it. My first day was walking,
Yeah.
I think for minimum 20 minutes, just go for a walk, do some stretching. I did little things like made my bed, took a cold shower. I meditated. I did gratitude journal. and some positive affirmations. And those small things help prepare my mind for the mental journey and the physical journey ahead, because it's really about training your brain to become comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And that's what
Right.
really the key to any kind of transformation, physical, spiritual, financial, transformation. It's about being able to do hard things when it's uncomfortable. Most of us live this life of comfort, right? Which is awesome. We have all this technology at the tip of our fingertips. Any kind of discomfort you have, if you have pain, if you're hot, you're too cold, we have all these things to make us feel comfortable instantly. You know what I'm saying? You're thirsty, you got water. You're hungry, you got food. You
Yeah.
name it. And to be uncomfortable is hard for us now, right? It's like you have to go out of your way to be uncomfortable because there's so many comforts there for you.
Right.
And like I mentioned, it's not just like losing weight. Physical transformation is one type of transformation. There's spiritual transformation. There's all different types of transformation. The key, to get through all of them is to become comfortable in uncomfortable situations, which is why I have people make their bed and meditate and keep a gratitude journal and take a cold shower, because those things can be hard for some people, but they're small things. And if you could get through those things and train your brain to become comfortable in those uncomfortable situations, then when you're at the gym and you're huffing and puffing and you're sweating and your muscles are burning, you can say to yourself, hey, we got this. This is hard. Yes, I'm very uncomfortable, but you know what? I can do hard things and I can push through these uncomfortable situations because you've done these other small things, and it kind of carries over. And so that's kind of what my approach was I wasn't like going from 0 to 100, but I was very strategic about helping me and my followers overcome those mental and emotional hurdles that come up when people start their journey.
Yeah. So, what for you personally was probably most challenging? Was it because I mean, you spent all this time eating a lot of like high fat, high sugar, processed foods and things like that. Was it
Mhm.
challenging to switch your diet for you? And because I think I remember you talked a lot about the emotional connection to food specifically, and how people underestimate how food really messes with our psyche based on what's in the food, and how that affected the first part of your journey. Was were did you fight a lot with cravings going back into a keto diet, or was going jumping into the keto diet, do you feel like it actually went smoother than you expected when it came to things like that?
Really good questions. I absolutely struggled with cravings, especially that first probably 2 to 3 weeks is what's hardest for people, because here's the picture that I'll paint for you is we train our brains to deal with emotional pain with substances, like I said, food, drugs, alcohol. Like I think we talked about this on the last podcast, but food is the most accessible, right? It's not illegal, it's legal. You can go buy ice cream, it's not illegal yet, maybe it should be, but people can go buy it any time of the day. They can push the button on their phone and DoorDash shows up and they have this food, and you get this dopamine hit, like a
Mm,
chemical reaction in the brain from eating these hyper palatable sugary foods that taste good but also make you feel good. And so some people use that as their drug, right? Some people gravitate towards that, and you numb the emotional pain of life with a substance, and you do it multiple times a day. And now you've trained your brain to be like this reward system where you're like, hey, we like these little dopamine hits. Your body and your brain become addicted to them. And now you're like, okay, now I have this journey back to fit. Even for myself, I was nervous about that because the emotional pain of my breakup was still there.
oh
And I
yeah.
was really worried about, okay, how am I going to go from Ben and Jerry's ice cream and some wine to, eating some broccoli and, some chicken or whatever it is that I'm eating on my keto diet. Um, it was really hard. The first 2 weeks, your body goes through these withdrawal symptoms where your body's kind of freaking out, like, hey, where's our reward? So like we are suffering here. Where is our drug? That
Yeah.
we've had this whole time. So you're hungry, you're moody, you're grumpy, you don't have the same energy levels, right? It's not like you feel amazing after eating one salad. Your body just is going through this withdrawal symptoms, and that's where the power of empathy comes in for me, where I'm like, man, I used to think, what's wrong with people? Why can't they just stop eating so much junk food? And exercise. Like it's so easy. But until I did my first fit to fat experiment, I didn't understand that. And then doing it the second time, it was even a deeper understanding of the
Right.
power of that emotional connection to food. And
Yeah.
so for me, the first 2 to 3 weeks were really, really hard, but I did notice a huge difference in just getting out and exercising, like walking every single day, stretching, doing a little bit of core work. And then eventually I got back into the gym and did some body weight exercises. I was so out of shape. I remember my first day there, just super nervous, like, okay, I hope I survive this first workout. Because the workout wasn't like too intense, but when you're so out of shape, any workout's going to be hard. But I was able to get through it. And it's interesting how that counteracts some of the cravings, the emotional cravings that you have for these foods. I'm not saying it gets rid of them, but it does alleviate some of that. It does help out a little bit. But I'd be lying to say it was, if it wasn't hard, it was really hard.
Yeah. How did you feel how did you feel your relationships were changing on the second half? Because I remember you did talk a
Mhm.
lot about how your daughters were like, Dad, you're kind of mean. We're just gonna be honest. You're
Yeah.
a little grumpy. We need you to calm down, and you were sad. Again, you went through a breakup but you're purposefully putting things in your body that aren't making you feel any better. Your relationships with your girls it was rocky. I'm sure with your ex-wife, it was probably like, whoa, like what's going on? Just your closest friends who are around you. How did you see that change on the other side, trying to get back to fit?
Yeah, my girls will tell you if they were here that there's a huge difference. Like they said, they would never let me do it again because of how like grumpy I was during that fit to fat phase. Because once again, it's a vicious cycle that it's created. It's not just I eat the food and gain the fat. That's not at all how it works. It affects your hormones. It affects your sleep. It affects your mood. It affects your energy levels. Your ability to handle stress is not what it used to be. So your fuse is shorter, if you will. Like the amount of patience that I have as a parent is like X amount, right? And then when I'm unhealthy physically, it's even shorter than that. So now my patience level is this, and that's what I have for the day. And by sometimes noon, it's gone. It's like I
Mm,
can't handle this anymore. But when you're healthy, not saying skinny, not when like I'm not saying like you have to be, skinny or ripped or shredded. I'm talking about healthy, meaning eating real food, exercising in a way that makes you feel good, right? It's not about having six-pack abs. It's just living a healthy lifestyle, sleeping through the night, right? Getting efficient sleep and managing your stress. You're a happier, better version of yourself. And that doesn't mean I'm perfect. Like it doesn't mean I don't get mad at my girls if they disobey, but it just means my patience now is even bigger, right?
mm,
My patience level for the day is a lot more than what it used to be. And I'm focusing on like things like meditation, which help me be more present in the moment and not be so reactive during the day. But when I wasn't doing that and eating all the junk food and not sleeping through the night, my hormones were through the roof. My stress level was, my stress hormones were like elevated all day long.
mm.
You're constantly in survival mode. But now that I was losing the weight and sleeping through the night and managing my stress and exercising, all those things, make a powerful impact and to how you show up in your relationships. And so, yeah, for me, like my mood significantly changed because when you sleep through the night, your hormones are more balanced. Your cortisol isn't through the roof all day long. It's
Right.
a healthy amount. And yeah, my ability to parent, if you will, like that, that relationship improved significantly. And my girls, they'll testify to that.
Good.
So
That's good. And then you moved to Hawaii and it just got even better. Like, let
I
me
have to be next to the beach, it's
Yes.
awful. Just
Cherry
kidding.
on top. Ugh, the worst. I can't. Well, this I like this because
Mhm.
we touched on last time how the industry when it comes to fitness, it's such a business right now that everyone is jumping on this bandwagon of, you know, lose this amount in 2 minutes and you're gonna be like Kim Kardashian by the end of the day, or like, well, everything you've heard about fitness is wrong and this is what you have to do. You only have to work out for like 10 minutes a day if you're a female, and then you're gonna lose like 500 pounds by next week. I mean, it's like the craziest thing out there. And yet at the end of the day, you have people who aren't touching on how problematic just how our body's functioning based on what we're giving it it literally can completely change who we are. We can become unrecognizable to ourselves even. And then to add the stress of the pandemic on top of that, and as a pharmacist, I'm calling patients every day who, health went out the window. And they're diabetics. They have high blood pressure. They have high cholesterol already. They're on all these medications before the pandemic. Then to add that extra layer of the stresses of that and not being able to see their loved ones and all these things. People were just like, forget the insulin. I can't cope. Like, so then they're just eating whatever's close by. They don't want to go outside. They're scared to go outside. So exercise goes out the window. Anything that's quick to eat, they're going to eat it because they just can't, they can't even imagine having to think of what to cook, And so a lot of people are really struggling with their health right now. And it's actually making me irritated to see the industry as a whole, like almost play off of that. And you're seeing more ads about these quick, get skinny quick or get buff quick, ads out there, and people are jumping onto it because they already feel horrible after the pandemic. And I just like that I'm well, first off, I'm with your girls. Please don't do this again. I'm scared. But like, you took the time to get in the deep with the rest of us, right? And instead of just throwing out all of this, just do this and you're going to be awesome. You did decide to empathize in different stages of life, from when you were younger to now when you're a little older. You wanted to like process that and then actually go on that journey. To hear a trainer say, wow, it was really nice to have all these other groups of people that were following me, encouraging me. Like, I'm technically supposed to be encouraging them, but they're all also encouraging me. People don't hear that from their trainers, right? Like, that's just not things that you hear from people these days. And so how do you feel that, moving forward after having done it, what was it, 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Right? Having done it 10 years ago to now having finished that second leg of this Fit to Fat to Fit experience, what for you did you learn differently in this stage that you didn't learn the first time that you want to implement going forward, that you think is just going to make, I don't know if whether it's business or just your personal life, like this has completely changed how I see life going forward?
Yeah. For me, doing it a second time, being at the stage I am in my life, the biggest thing that I've realized is the key to overcoming our old patterns is our self-awareness. And back then I didn't really understand what self-awareness was, right? I didn't understand what that meant. I think the first time it was more of like experiencing, oh, this is way more mental and emotional than I thought it was. And that was kind of like a first starter, like, oh, okay, it's way more mental and emotional. Now, having done it the second time and then going through, emotional turmoil during my journey, like a breakup, right? Understanding emotional eating at an even deeper level than I did the first time really opened my eyes to just how much of physical transformation is tied to our mental and emotional health. And this is why you mentioned the pandemic, for example, or abuse or trauma that people have struggled with their whole life. We cope with that emotional pain in different ways. And like I said before, for some people it's drugs or alcohol, for other people it's food, for other people it's church or religion. We use things to help us get through that pain. And some of those things are unhealthy and some of those things are healthier than others. But we all look for something to deal with the emotional pain of life. And this is why physical transformation is not just a physical journey, right? People go into this thinking, oh, I'm going to lose 10 pounds in 2 days doing this new diet, but they don't factor in, okay, what happens when my kids are driving me crazy? What happens when I get in a fight with my spouse? Or what happens if I can't pay my bills this month? Or what happens if there's a pandemic, and how that's going to affect my emotions, which affects your motivation, which affects your hormones and your mood and your ability to actually do the physical work. That's one thing that people overlook, and they don't connect the dots between the physical journey and the mental, emotional, spiritual journey. And
Yeah.
those things there's so many parallels between those journeys. And if you could see, and this is where self-awareness comes in, if you could take a step back and see it all happening at the same time, you can understand like, oh, this physical pain that happened as a kid, whether it's, maybe it was physical abuse or maybe it was emotional abuse, that right there triggers me in stressful situations to reach for the food, to reach for the alcohol, to reach for the drugs. And as you become aware, you become the observer. And when you become the observer, then you can more thoughtfully respond to those triggers in life. When something triggers you, like a pandemic, or your kids driving you crazy, or your spouse, you get in a fight with them, or your finances triggers you, you can start to break those old patterns. You can take a step back and say, okay, I see what's happening here. This stressor right here is triggering me to emotionally respond with anger, resentment, self-hate, self-loathing, whatever it is. And normally I would reach for the cupcake to kind of, numb that emotional pain temporarily, because you get that little dopamine hit, which is the chemical reaction in the brain where it makes you feel good temporarily. And you're like, okay, I'll do that whenever I feel the stress. But now, as the observer of those thoughts, you can then kind of play it out like a movie. Okay, do I want to go down this path, or do I want to go down this path? Because my whole life for 30, 40, 50 years, I've just been reacting. I've just been reacting, not even being aware. But as you become more aware, you can connect those dots of the physical, emotional pain that's causing you to do unhealthy physical things. And then you can put an end to it and more thoughtfully respond in those moments and be more in control of your life. But it takes time, it takes practice, just like exercise, right? You can use meditation. Meditation works for me. You can use prayer. You can use all different types of methods like breath work. And there's different ways to become that observer that I talked about. Find what works for you, but you got to, spend time doing it. You can't just meditate once or go to church once and be like, oh, I'm done. I'm good to go now.
Ooh.
It's a constant day in, day out type of thing where you're like, okay, now I know how to handle these situations. Now I can see, where all my problems are coming from. And now that I'm aware of it, I can learn to let it go. I can work with my therapist or my pastor, whoever it is, to let it go and not let it control me in those situations. And that's where you start to see so much growth. And then that physical journey, that the diet and exercise becomes so much easier, because now you've built that self-awareness. And so that's what I've learned the second time around versus the first time, that I can now share with people and help them through that process of becoming that observer. But it's weird for people, because people are like, wait, why do I have to make my bed? Why do I have to meditate? Or why do I have to take a cold shower or do gratitude? How's that going to get me a six pack? You know what I'm saying? People are like, that doesn't make sense to me. I just need to eat less calories and work out. Why am I making my bed and taking a cold shower and writing down 3 things I'm grateful for? I don't get it. But once it clicks for them, and once they start doing that on a daily basis, their brain starts to react, and they're like, oh, I can do these hard things that used to be really hard for me, because I'm becoming comfortable in these uncomfortable situations. And that's what life's all about. Uncomfortable situations. How am I going to get through it? Am I going to give in and just give up and be like, that's too hard, right?
Yeah.
And like go back to our old ways, which is what we've been trained to do. It's literally rewiring our brain, but it's almost, a lot of people think it's learning a new way of thinking. It's almost unlearning everything we've been taught.
That's
If
true.
you could unlearn a lot of things you've been taught about how to react to this world, your normal natural reaction probably is to choose the harder right instead of the, oh shoot, how's it go? Choose the harder right instead of the easier wrong, or something like that. It's almost
Yeah.
unlearning all of that. So hopefully that
Yeah.
makes sense.
It does. It does. I think that's something I learned a lot this year too, especially with, I have my transformation coach and things like that. We actually had to go on pause because he's in this process of restructuring his brand. And as excited as I've been for him in that journey, that was, for me, it was like, I need you to be here in this moment. Because it was like towards the end of my program, I was finishing up my master's and I was starting to feel stressed. I had a mental break. Like I literally had a mental breakdown. I'm not even going to be embarrassed by that. I was crying hysterically. I couldn't even I couldn't even go into my kitchen. I could not look at my kitchen to think to cook. I just thought, I don't think I went upstairs to my kitchen for like 3 weeks straight. I couldn't look at it. As soon as I walked upstairs to think, I would burst into tears. And I'm like, nope, I can't be up here. I have to go back to my room. I would stay in my room. I was ordering food. I wanted to hide. I didn't want to go to work. I literally just wanted to be in a ball because I was so stressed out. I ate all of my emotions and stress. I gained weight back. And yet in the back of my head, I'm going, but I remember the things that I learned about how stress and food for me connect strongly. And so in the back of my head, I would still hear myself trying to coach myself through, like, you know what this is. You know what this means. I would have never done that before had I not worked on that with my transformation coach and listening to things that you've talked about too, about mindfulness and trying not to be reactive and being present with myself. I mean, we're on this go, 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 do, night, morning to night, morning to night. We just go, go, go. And we often can't even remember the details of what's happened. It's just like, oh, all the days blend. We're just grabbing, we're just going, we're just, running around. But in those moments where you just refocus, you recenter, whether you're meditating, whether you're just like, hey, you're doing this right now, and just let me bring that to my own remembrance that this is happening in the present moment. That's that has actually taken away so much of the guilt of even going through seasons like that, because for in my head I'm going, but this is not a forever season because I know what this is. Instead of it happening and then I go, what happened? I gained X amount of pounds. I'm how did I get here? And I'm totally oblivious to what's happened. But instead I'm going, no, I remember what was happening. This stressor happened, this stressor happened, this stressor happened, this stressor happened. Therefore, I gravitated towards that. And there's an end date. There's graduation. When graduation hits, I don't have all that stress. It's going to go away. Then we can breathe. We can come down off that mountain. We can go to the grocery store. We can walk. We can do. So I gave myself grace enough to even experience that level of stress, and gave myself grace enough to tell my family I need help. And my mom flew out and she helped. She cooked for me and all that stuff and really surrounded me. And I think we get embarrassed to even mention that I'm not okay. I'm stress eating, or I stopped working out, or I'm not taking any of my meds anymore because I just can't handle it, or whatever it is. And I've gravitated towards those things that we're more prone to be addicted to just get by or get through or cover or block or numb whatever it is that's causing us to run to those things. But the mindfulness piece, if it doesn't even have to be just the the workout industry, but if just society as a whole took mindfulness more seriously, especially in first world problems, like what's mindfulness in first world? We don't do that. If we did though, I think we wouldn't the normal stressors of life, we would probably show ourselves more grace, and we wouldn't seem so high strung everywhere we go, and we'd probably make better choices in those moments. So I love that you've taken that on, and I'm excited to see how even your business, I'm sure your business is going to even transform. Like we'll notice it, how much more you're going to probably focus on that. And I really hope other people in the industry are watching what you do in this regard, because as someone who's never been a trainer, who's never like that athletic person, but wants to be healthy for my future husband, for my future kids, for whatever God has planned for me to do in this world. It's so nice to hear the person who's training you say, like, don't forget to be present with yourself though. Like,
Yeah.
don't just like run after this goal and you weren't present on the journey getting there and growing on the journey outside of the weight loss. Like, are you happy though? Like, wow, you lost 100 pounds, but do you have joy? Like,
Yeah.
did it bring you any joy? Maybe for like a season, but it's
Yeah.
not, it hasn't really transformed your state of seeing yourself as worthy. Like, we should talk about that because your weight's not going to bring that just miraculously, and
Yeah.
I want to see more people do that. They don't have to necessarily go
Yeah.
back to 40. They could just watch, they could just go back and watch our little videos and learn it and read a book or something that you wrote. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it is transformative. It is
Yeah. I appreciate that. And that's so interesting you talked about that because, a lot of people think the results are what bring happiness. When in reality, falling in love with the process is what brings fulfillment and happiness. It's not the results, right? A lot of us think, oh, once I get this much money, once I get this body, then I will be happy. You can choose to be happy now. If you can learn how to be happy now in the middle of the process, even when it's messy, even when you have those moments of like eating that food and be like, you know what? This is a good lesson for me. Like, and I'm glad I did this. I don't regret doing what I did because I learned so much from it. And you did the right thing. Okay, what did I learn from that experience? Right? When you were so stressed out, you're like, okay, call my mom. I ask for help. Right? I need some help, you guys. Can someone please help me? Like, this is really, really hard. And this is what I do. I know myself really well. I know when I'm that stressed out, I'm going to go towards food. And so learning from that, the wiser, higher version of herself is like, now I know what to do in those situations. Instead of beating myself up and self-loathing and saying I'm a failure and I'll never do it. That's kind of maybe what the younger, more immature version of ourselves might do. Unless you build that self-awareness, you're like, okay, I know myself better now. I know what to do in these situations. And then next time, maybe you'll be able to respond in the moment. That's kind of where real change can happen, is responding in the moment instead of like later on down the road. But I mean, it's such a journey, and like the other problems are perception of what success looks like. It's like I'm only successful if I get this body, if I can control my cravings and get skinny, then I will be happy, and then all my problems will go away. It's like, man, what if we could learn how to fall in love, like with all the messiness of the process and all the mistakes that we make, and still love ourselves and give ourselves that grace.
Yeah. I actually have a question. Um, you're a parent of 2 daughters, and I know the world in general seems to be a lot harder on us women when it comes to our bodies and our worth. We are often, more times out of than not, we are equated. We're told that our worth is attached to our physique.
Yes.
And like we could be, Condoleezza Rice, but if we don't look like Beyonce, who cares? And it's frustrating. So how, especially now that your daughters have watched you go through this, and when you did it before, they were so young, like they don't remember anything. So how are you as a dad taking what you learned and trying to teach your daughters those things? Because you love your girls and it is evident. They are your world.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you've just been like, my daughters have to learn this earlier than I did, and I want them to grasp it now? Like I would want to. Like, I'm not even a parent, but like everything in me that I'm learning now, I'm just like, I need to write this down for my future kids to learn by age 5. Like before kindergarten, they need to know this is a thing, because I don't want them to go through all of the process of having to figure it out. If I can give them the tools today, I will give it to them. So how are you taking those lessons and just instilling them into your daughters at this time?
It's a really good question. And it's my best answer is I'm literally just doing my best at what I know how to do. Like I teach them all the things I know. I show them all the things that I've experienced through my experiences and try and teach them. But what I've learned is that the best teacher is personal experiences. So like I could tell them stories, I could show them statistics and data, and they've seen me get big and how unhealthy I got and how unpleasant I was to be around during that time. They've experienced that firsthand. Now, does that mean they'll never touch a cookie and they'll never get addicted to like certain foods? I don't know. Like I still, as a parent, like we think we're like, oh, I'm doing way better than my parents. My kids are like, like they're gonna get all this stuff that my parents didn't give me, and we think we're gonna do so much better than our parents. But in reality, it's all just a crapshoot. It really is. And I'm learning this now because my 11-year-old is turning 12 and she's this preteen age, and she's more opinionated, she's more stubborn, she's more moody, her hormones are starting to change. And I'm like, wait, I've taught her all the right things. I've taught her about sugar and what it does to you, but she still wants it and she still eats it. And like, I can't live this life where I'm constantly fighting her on like, hey, that's poison. If you eat that, it's going to be bad for you. I have to let her sometimes have her own personal experiences with that. And that's what I'm learning now as a parent, is like, I can wash my hands and say, look, I've taught her everything I know on how to be healthy. And if she chooses to do that, then great. I'll support her in that. But if she also chooses the mac and cheese and like, some ice cream, like I'm not going to shame her about it or make her feel guilty about it. And I think that's the hard part, is like, I'm trying to do all these things, right? Like set up, reward systems or, ways where they don't always want to eat that food. Like the other day, I was like, hey, Kalea, I'll give you $1 if you try a shot of this beet juice that I had. It was like, raw beet juice, right?
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't mind it. I think it tastes pretty good. But for her, I know that she's not going to choose that like normally.
Right.
But I was like, hey, I'll give you $1 if you take a shot of this. And so she's like, okay, because money incentivizes her. So I think what I'm trying to say is be aware of what like phase your kids are in, because it's not always going to be the same. When they were 3, 4, 5 years old, they loved broccoli, they loved veg, they loved whatever I made them. Now that they're older, they're so much more picky, and I'm like, okay, I could force feed them this food and make sure that they eat it. But I think it's just being aware of what their motivation is at certain points in time and finding unique, creative ways, like getting back to being creative as a parent. Like, okay, really contemplating, meditating, thinking about what is my kid into, like observing them and being aware of like, okay, this is something that they're excited about. This is something that they like to do. And like, for example, sometimes I don't like the games that they play, or I don't like them being on TikTok or YouTube. But instead of like, hey, turn that off, like stop looking at that, or no more, it's like, hey, let's watch this together. Can I watch what you're watching? Like, let's do this together. And instead of judging them like, oh, I don't want you watching that, it's like, show me some of your favorite videos. Like, what have you seen and what have you learned this week? Or like, hey, let's play this game called Roblox, which you don't know what that is, but it's a game.
I keep hearing about it.
And I have no interest in playing it. It's a dumb game because I'm used to like Zelda and like,
yes.
Contra, and I'm like, what's the point of this? There's no point to it. But getting down on their level and be like, hey, let's just play this game together. Like, I don't know what it's about. And I think for me, just having that relationship with them is I think gonna help us have a better, healthy relationship around food or those kinds of things as they get older. That's my hope, at least.
Yeah.
Versus always making it about like, hey, did you get your protein in? How many carbs did you have? Like, you got to stay away from sugar and artificial sweeteners, and then it becomes too much, right? It almost becomes like if I don't know if you've had parents that are like too strict with religion, it can kind of push you to like, man, I really want to try alcohol now because I've heard how bad it is for the past like 20 years. Maybe I want to try it. I think it's. I don't know if I'm answering this question right. I'm sorry, Candace. This is probably the worst answer to a question. No. But I think as a parent, it's not as simple as like, oh, here's what I do every day, and they have no desire for sugar. Like, I wish I had an easy answer for that, but
yeah, I think it's a real answer. Like, I don't think it's like you shouldn't have like a textbook answer to this,
yeah.
Because I think, just from watching people parent, I'm watching my older brother be a dad for the first time, and his daughter's turning 3 months this weekend. and
Yeah.
she's grown a lot. Like 3 months, apparently she's done a lot. And even for him, it's like, man, like there's so many things I want to teach her and show her and stuff, but she has her own personality, and she's
Yes.
she's, doing what she's doing as she's growing and learning and observing the world around her. She's taking it in as much as she can. And even
Yeah.
when I think like what you said is actually very true though, where it's really cool to have those parents that appreciate and are in they're intentional
Hmm.
about,
Their
yeah, they're
intent.
like in
Yeah.
they're yeah, like they're intentional about studying their child and knowing their children as individuals, even though as a parent, like you're learning, you're growing as an individual yourself while you're parenting. So it's more like hopefully you're demonstrating things in front of them without also like suffocating them to try
Yeah.
to be you per se.
Exactly. I think the most powerful teacher is being the example, like doing your thing and letting them observe that and see that instead of saying, hey, you need to do what I'm doing, because that's what every parent does, right?
Yeah,
Every parent's like, hey, you need to become me and do what I'm doing because what I'm doing is right.
right.
But then we see a lot of like bad habits get passed on to, multiple generations. And I think it's good to, yes, one, be the example, but if they choose that path, then obviously be excited about it. But if they don't choose that path, learn not to be disappointed in your kids, or learn not to be like, oh, why is my child a hard child? Why don't they just do what I do? Then they won't suffer. It's like, we need to learn to let go of that as a parent, of like, they have to be what I want them to be.
Yeah.
Because we would have hated that as a kid. We would have hated our
Um,
parents being like, you have to be like me.
facts.
you know
Truth.
so
Yeah, that's good. I like that. So, you know, what for you at this stage, um, for someone who maybe they, obviously didn't purposefully gain weight, but maybe
mhm.
they either gained weight or they lost that muscle mass that they had worked so hard to, get, or, whatever it is, or they're just starting their journey to whatever that transformation is. Um, what are the three things that you would say, hey, like, make sure to do this on your journey?
Yeah.
And, what would that look like?
Yeah. Before I give those three things, here's the question I ask a lot of people that I work with. Is helping them find what their happy balance is. And what I mean by that is, a lot of people think, oh, I want this Instagram body. Like, I want this girl's body or this guy's body. That's what I want to look like, right? And so I'm like, okay, we can do that if that's what you want. But in order to get there, ask yourself, are you going to be happier counting calories, counting macros, weighing your food, bringing Tupperware containers of the food that you're supposed to eat out to eat, like cutting back on social situations, like getting really strict? Is that the type of lifestyle that you want to live to get those results that you think you want, which you think is going to make you happier? Maybe there's a happier balance somewhere in between, where it's like, okay, instead of 5% body fat, maybe let's start with 15% body fat and work on that and see how you feel. Like, do you feel like it's too restricted? Like, do you feel like you can't go out with friends and have a drink, or you can't go celebrate, your friend's birthday party, or whatever it is? Like, you have to factor those things in, because people can get to the 5% body fat if they really, every little detail of their life was controlled, and like, but I promise you, most people wouldn't be happier. Even for me, getting back to fit, that last week of losing those last 5 pounds, yeah, I got back to fit. I lost that weight, but to be honest with you, I was miserable. Like,
Mm,
I was moody, I was grumpy, I was not happy. Like, and I was like, I can't wait for this to be over, because I'm not happy getting this lean. Like, my body is telling
wow.
me, dude, take a break. Like, you don't need to look this way. um and so that's what I would recommend first and foremost, is really like contemplate and meditate on that. Like, really think about that. Like, would you be happier at that, like living that type of lifestyle? And then from there, what three things would I have them do? The first thing would be, the list of stuff that I mentioned before, is implementing that on a daily basis. And it doesn't have to be my list, but things like making your bed, taking a cold shower, learning how to meditate for 5 to 10 minutes a day, a gratitude list of 3 to 5 things per day, positive affirmations, 3 to 5 things, saying positive things about yourself to yourself. Maybe start with that and start training your brain to become comfortable in uncomfortable situations. So that would be the first thing, is training your brain first and foremost. And then from there, figure out a form of exercise that works for you. Like, it doesn't have to be bodybuilding. It doesn't have to be CrossFit. It doesn't have to be Zumba. It doesn't have to be, it can be whatever you want it to be. But the problem is people look at certain forms of exercise as a chore. So maybe let's find something that doesn't feel like a chore to you, but still gives you those results. Like, you feel motivated to do it, right? And then same thing with the diet. Maybe find a way of eating that you feel works best for you, where you can control your calories to a certain extent, right? Like, if I did 2,000 calories of donuts and Doritos and like, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, yeah, I could eat that food and lose weight. But am I going to crave more junk food? Am I going to feel miserable and hungry all the time? Like, is that going to be optimal for me? Probably not. So maybe like a keto-ish or paleo-ish way of eating, or plant-based way of eating, like that fills you up, that makes you feel good, gives you the energy. Find what way of eating works best for you, because you are the best educator for yourself, rather than me or some expert online. Like, you figuring out what feels best for you, right? And you know your body better than anyone else. So those would be the tips that I would give people. And then from there, do the research. Maybe look into a book or a podcast or a program online that fits that that model that you're looking for, whether it's a certain form of exercise or whether it's that diet that you want to do some research before just jumping into it. And then the last thing I would say is find a group of people, spouse, a friend, a family member, loved one, someone to keep you accountable, right? A community of people doing it with you will make it more powerful in those moments where it becomes uncomfortable and the old you wants to quit, but you're like, hey, I can't let my people down. They're doing it too. That kind of stuff right there is very powerful. And that's like 4 or 5 things, but hopefully that works still.
Yeah, that's really good. And I would even add to that too, whatever you decide to do and however you decide to go on your journey, just be in the moment, like be in the journey. To allow the journey to be something that you're learning from, right? Because every stage that you go through, right? If you try this exercise, you realize you hate it. Well, you've learned that you don't like that one. We're not doing that again. Check. You've learned something. Just be present in the exploration of your body, your mind, your spirit. Just be there. And hopefully by the time you get to wherever you're going, you realize you've fallen in love with yourself. So I think
Love that.
I think that's really good. So thank you so much, Drew, for coming back again. Can you remind people how they can get in contact with you, follow you?
So it's super simple. On all my social media platforms, it's the same handle. It's at fit_2fat_2fit. So fit to fat to fit on all the platforms. That's my website as well. You can just go there and check out, all the programs, the stuff we talked about is all implemented in there. And that's pretty much it. So I'll try and keep you guys entertained on social media, and we'll see what the future holds out here for me in Hawaii.
Yes, I'm excited. I'm excited to see
You'll
how
have to
you
come
do.
visit.
I was about to say, I was like, I need to go out there and check out the seeds out there. So that sounds really cool. I love it. Well, I'm glad that you're in your new home. Enjoy being closer to, your brothers and things like that, your other family. And I hope that this phase of your life is fantastic. Enjoy your 40s. This should be exciting.
Yes.
This is a cool way to start your 40s. So guys, please follow Drew, follow what he's doing with his girls and his family, and go on his website at Fit to Fat to Fit. And I hope you guys really liked this episode. I always love talking with Drew. He's just cool people. So thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. If you have any questions, any topics you want covered, let me know. And as you guys know, I've told you guys for the last couple episodes, I'm in a rebranding process right now, and it's been super exciting. So trying to maneuver things. I'm a little bit slower online on my website right now, just because I want to do this intentionally and It's just been a fun ride, and you guys have been very encouraging through it. So thank you so much for that. But if you want to contact me more easily during this season, since I'm not so much on socials right now, you can still DM me, which is fine. But you can also email me, which is hola, HOLA, at firstpaso.com. Or you can actually text me at my business number. It's 859-800-3396. So feel free to text me. Let me know if you liked something you heard, if you resonated with Drew. And I mean, we want to hear from you. With that, guys, thank you so much. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Drew, I'm like mentally in Hawaii just listening to all the chirping and birds right now. So I'm a little jealous about that. But you enjoy yourself, and we will talk soon.
Yes, we will. Aloha.
Aloha. Thanks. Bye, Drew.
Bye.